Hi, I am Julie Wisdom, and I am the TMS coordinator here at Community Counseling Center, and today we will be discussing Raven Griffin's journey.
So my name is Raven Griffin, and I am a caseworker here at Community Counseling Center, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am a transgendered female. So with that being said, I have gone through a lot of stuff to get where I'm at, so...
Okay, so do you want to go ahead and start with talking about your childhood then?
Yeah, for sure. So I knew that something was off, I guess, when I was 4 or 5. I just knew I didn't feel like a boy. And I can remember people would mistake me for a girl. I had long eyelashes, and I just had very feminine features, I think. So I can remember that felt right. But I also grew up in Southeast Missouri. I'm going to give a shout out to my hometown of Swinton because I love it there. It's amazing. Not much there except for me, but it's awesome. It's south of Advance. So Advance is like 1,100 people, I think, at the time. So anyway, I'll get back on track. So, and I went to the Church of Christ, and in the 80s and 90s, I certainly remember a lot of just, you cannot be a member of the LGBTQIA plus community. That was wrong. That was a one-way ticket to hell. And so, so that made me internalize all of these feelings, right? So I just didn't know, I didn't have anybody to turn to, and that made it really difficult because I didn't trust anybody with what I was feeling. Now, I did think that everybody thought they were transgender when I was younger. I just thought that was like a normal thing to think, and then I realized it wasn't what everybody else was thinking. And so that drove me further into my own, world, I guess. So, yeah, and I grew up in a rodeo family too, so very traditional roles as far as masculinity and femininity and who's doing what and where and what you can and cannot do. So I had all these things, essentially finding my own nature and know where to take myself to. Plus, again, we didn't have the internet in the 80s. We barely had it in the 90s, and I live out in the country, so we didn't have it for a long time. So I had no way to research this. No idea what I was feeling. Nobody to be comfortable with talking about it to. Not like my teachers. There was no safe places for me to feel like I could go talk. So I just suffered greatly. I separated from my family. I pulled away from all the activities that we did, like the rodeo and stuff, and I just focused on my own stuff and tried to be alone, basically. So yeah, it wasn't until the late 90s that I learned what even a transgender person was. And unfortunately, my role models were the girls in Jerry Springer because that's the only information I had, so that wasn't super good.
Okay, so what led you to accepting your true self?
Heavy sigh. Just a long journey. I remember, I remember telling my college mentor this is how I felt, and then one of my best friends how I felt, Jared, and which. This was in the early 2000s, so to tell a dude that was very risky, and he was always been super accepting. Honestly, just years of depression, self-harm, wanting to die, maybe trying halfway but not being able to get to that point, and just being down. And this just kept going, and everything, everything came back to my gender, and it ruined all of my relationships, at least romantic or whatever. And so I just one day woke up and I was I can't do this anymore. I was getting ready for work every morning and crying because I couldn't be who I was supposed to be. And that made every day already starting off negative and bad. And everything, I was just brooding, I was dark, I was just exhausted. And so just one day I just woke up and I was I have to do something. I have to do something to fix this. I cannot live like this anymore. At some point I have to be my happiness has to trump everybody else's happiness.
Okay. So how did you transition and what did that process look like?
Well, I searched out a therapist, which would have been my third therapist. I had tried twice before to go to therapy, but I didn't really connect with them very well. So I was able to find a therapist in Cape Girardeau that I liked. And then after a few months of therapy, I found an endocrinologist to do my hormones, and my therapist wrote me a letter, and I went up there to meet with that doctor, and we talked, and he started prescribing my hormones. And then I waited. Oh, at the same time though, let me say this. At the same time, I did facial hair removal, which was really important for me. So I was doing that in the early parts because I knew it would take up to like a few months before the hormones would really get into any kind of effect, and before I would actually like come out to the world. Like I still kind of kept it hidden, but not hidden, but kind of hidden, but also not hidden, but mostly hidden, until I was able to tell my parents again. And so that was my process, just 6 months of like almost in between time. Like I was just in between these different people.
So what was that in between time? What did that look like for you?
So it was pretty stressful within itself because I still had to come out to work, my work colleagues and people. I wasn't concerned about how the company would react. I knew that they would like support me, but you just never know. That's the thing, like every time, and this is going to kind of go off track, but we're just going to do a 180 and then we'll get back on the interstate.
Okay.
So coming out to everybody individually is like constantly the most stressful thing because you do not know how people react. Mm-hmm. You hope for the best, always, 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 but it's every time you're telling this same story over and over and over again. It becomes really exhausting because so I had to do that first at work, and I can remember I didn't even plan on doing it, but we had our like monthly group, and after group was over, I just stood up, I just said, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. Anybody have any questions? Okay, no, good. And I just left. Like, I just walked out. Like, I just left everybody stunned. Like, I was like, I ain't taking no questions. Actually, I'm getting out of here. Like, no. No one's asking. You can text me your questions. I need to go breathe. So there was that. And then in that in-between time, I also started working on my name change. And I suddenly didn't feel like I could identify with, like, the he, him pronouns. But I also couldn't identify she, her because I wasn't ready yet. So I really was juggling with those they, them pronouns, which most people were pretty good about. Everybody made an effort. And
so what made you want to keep your last name the same?
Oh, well, you know, like that's who I am, right? That's my history. Those are my ancestors. Those are my people. I'm not going to abandon my last name if people don't accept it or don't want to. Like, it's my name. No one gets my name. I get to keep it.
So
no
what?
one's taking that from me.
Okay. So what do relationships look like during this process with you? Like friends, family?
Well, friends were good. Friends were fine. All of my friends were really accepting. I came out to my sister, Beth, and that was really nerve-wracking because we've always had these different discussions on like the LGBTQIA plus community, and just our viewpoints were way, way different. Mm-hmm. So I was nervous because you just never know. Again, so I remember I drove out to meet her. I can still remember the album I listened to. I listened to an album called Fine Art by Caskey. It is so good. That's just what I listened to the whole way up there. I had never heard it. I just listened to it. It's some new music. It's really good. I liked it. Anyway, so we were getting out there, and her husband left to go get pizza, so I was like, this is the perfect time to have a conversation. But she was like, I knew you wanted to talk about something just because you were off. So I remember telling her, and I just explained to her that, you know, this is who I am, this is how I felt, these were the, like, wanting to die and feeling like I wanted to die, like, to the point of even, like, coming to work, I knew the trees I could probably run my car into. Like, no one should feel that way, that's awful. Mm-hmm. And so I waited for her to respond, and she was just like, I had no idea you felt that way. I basically did not know it was that powerful, and no matter what you choose to do, I will be here and I will love you. And so, and that's, we never looked back on it. Like, it was hard. I know it was hard for her because she would tell me to get used to it, but that's what you expect, right? Like, it's not, it's not always easy. But I am an open book. I let her ask me whatever, and so I think our friendship has gotten closer, or our, like, sisterhood has gotten closer, and she let me put Facebook sisters on there, so that's what nice. Okay. So, well, you just never know, like,
yeah,
really how people react, but she's really tried really hard, and she's been a big supporter of me as a human, so but that was difficult. That was really, like, draining emotionally to get through that.
So what about your parents?
Okay. So I came out to my mom in like January, so I was on my hormones for like 6 months. That went about as well as you could expect it to go to with someone who is very religious and a very good Christian. She's a good person, And of course, you know, all the same things that everyone that would go through this, like, this isn't right, God doesn't make mistakes, you don't feel this way, you're being manipulated. And it's like, no, I'm not. Stop looking for excuses about why I feel this way, and you think God doesn't make mistakes. I would agree with that, but I don't think I'm a mistake. Like, this is who I am, and if this makes me happier, then I think that, like, God would want that. So anyway, she came in with all this stuff, and I knew it was going to be hard for her, including, she said, this is just the best way I found to attack her back. She said, well, I'm going to pray for you every night to change your ways. So then I said, well, Mother, I will pray for you every night to accept me. See, we can both. So I think she has tried. My sister Beth told me she would call almost every day crying about it. But like, I was like, well, I feel bad, but I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I'm out here living my best life, and I know this is hard. But through that time, I think once she realized this is who I'm doing, she has worked to try. Now, she still dead names me. She still mispronouns me. I don't fight it. I don't care. Like, having her in my life is better than not having her in my life, and if that's what she needs to do. But I have noticed she doesn't always use my pronouns, and she doesn't always use my name. So I think that's her way of maybe, like, trying without going to something that she's not completely comfortable with. And her not being comfortable is okay with me. I mean, I would rather her be comfortable, of course. That probably came out wrong. But her finding her comfort with my transition is what I want. And I told her that when I came out. I said, I don't need you to accept me as a person, but this is happening. Like, so you have to find a way to either, if you want me in your life, you don't have to accept what I'm doing, but you're going to have to be, like, nice and kind and try to find a way to be okay with it somewhat. Otherwise, you're going to lose me. That's just what's going to happen. Because I'm not ever, and I can remember having this conversation on the phone a couple times where she was like, well, do you think you'll ever just stop doing it? And I'm like, no, I'm never going to go back to a world that's dark and full of that stuff. Like, I don't ever want to go back to that world, because that's not fun. It's not fun for my friends. It's not fun for me. And so, you know, why go back into depression? Like, you people, I'm just not going to go back that way. So she has, I think once when she was able to maybe accept that, she has been trying harder. And she tells me that she loves me on the phone, and we probably said we love each other more now than we ever did in the before time, because it was just, we're just probably not emotionally stable people. We don't talk about our feelings in my family, so feelings are always the hardest. But I've noticed her trying.
So what about your dad?
Okay, so my dad is awesome, but that's a misleading statement too. He has not come around yet. My dad is still awesome. So my dad goes to the Church of Christ too. I've never known him to be that religious. I mean, not like my mom, but he goes to church, but he's like an old school cowboy. He's got like the handlebar mustache, and he was a farrier, so he shoots horses, and he drives like diesel trucks, and he just loves all that stuff, and he's just like an old school cowboy blacksmith. So he wishes it was the 1880s for him. And also, my family there's only two genders. That's how it has to be, right? Like, that's what God created, that's what they believe, that's what I suppose science books taught at the time. I don't know. So in the before time, me and my dad were not always super close. I actually think my family thinks we were closer than I think we were. Because I was always reserved with them. And my dad had me horse stuff, rodeo and roping. Like, I can rope. I can still rope, not on a horse anymore. And I was good at it. And that's not being braggadocious. I was just a good hand. But I didn't feel connected to my family, so I just like quit and focused on baseball, because none of my family played baseball. And I often think about my dad like letting me, like knowing I was talented at roping and then letting me walk away. That is like such a nice thing for someone to do, because, you know, I was a decent roper and it was something he loved doing, so to let me walk away from something that I was good at. I'm still, I guess, relatively close. We used to joke around a lot. Like, I would make an effort to like go to, he rebuilt this 1970s International over cab truck. I don't know, it's a diesel truck. He loves that old stuff. And I would go to some of the truck shows that he went to or tried to, and I always, like, I love my parents too, but, so I would say we were close, but we would talk. We talked a lot about Lonesome Dove. That's, you know, Western movies, stuff like that. And then in the after time, we don't talk, which is weird because, and it sucks because like now since transitioning, and this is kind of going to be off a little bit, but we're going to take a hard right and then we'll take a hard left and come back. So transitioning obviously allowed me to find myself, and I didn't know who I was before because I was trying to hide myself. I had things I liked, like everybody had my own particular style and fashion choices, but through coming out and accepting myself, I thought I would be somebody different. I thought I'd be much more, well, I don't know what I thought. But through my transition, I have found myself going back to the country western rodeo lifestyle, that horses, and I want to be involved in that more, but the path has been lit back and no one's at home. But I do think if I hang in there, I think that it will start to change. Get back on my dad. So my therapist had talked about something that I had never thought of before. So like my whole life, and this is whether you transition at whatever age, you know most of your life, your whole life, this is who you are. If you're hiding it from everybody, like my parents, they didn't know that. So for all of my years of life, they had certain dreams and aspirations for me. And then for me to come out and say, oh, hey, by the way, I'm going to change my name and I'm going to start living as a transgender female. All those dreams go away, and now they are like in a grieving process because they have essentially lost their son. And it's just, I can't imagine what that feels like for somebody to go through. So, like, I don't have, they have this like idea, and then you kind of shatter that, and now they're having to grieve the loss of somebody. And that's, you know, like anybody who's lost anybody knows that's hard. Like I miss my grandma Griffin all the time. So I do regret not telling my grandma because she was a sweet person. I'm not sure she would have accepted me, but I am confident she would have never turned her back on me. But this is also like a weird spiritual thing that just happened with my grandma. So the night that like the weekend before she passed away, the last time I saw her, I hadn't transitioned yet. And I was in there saying my goodbyes, and I thought that could be the last time. And before I left, she referenced me as a girl. I can't remember the exact quote because it just took me back. And then I thought to myself, is her spirit seeing my spirit, right? Like my soul? Because I don't know where genders come from, but I have to assume that we give off some energy, right? And so, but yeah, I wish I remember the quote, but it was just like so much going on. But yeah, she definitely referred to me as a girl, and I thought that was so crazy. So I never actually officially came out to my dad because I'm a coward, and I had used all my whatever to get to my mom, but my mom had said that she would tell him, and then she was going to back out. I'm like, no, you already said you were going to tell him. I'm spent. It's going to be a little while. So she did tell him at the Mexican restaurant in Bloomfield, Missouri, like 3 months later. And I think, if to know my dad is to know his reaction is perfect. I guess he just sat there very stoic with his mustache and didn't really have much emotional to say, apparently, other than he thought something was up. And then we don't really talk. I did message him on his birthday, which was a few weeks ago, and he did say thanks a bunch. So that's pretty good. And I did see him at my grandma, different grandma. My other grandma was nice too, but and he gave me a hug, but I think that was because we're at a funeral, and you can't be causing a bunch of ruckuses at a funeral, and like, oh, here's the transgender person showing up at the funeral, like making everything weird for everybody. But I wasn't making everything weird, but I think that they probably thought I was, but I wasn't. But now my uncle and aunt, Terry and Laura, this is really funny because they are such like, I thought they would be like, no, keep that away from me. But my Uncle Terry just walks up, just sits down right beside me and just starts talking like we've been, like nothing had changed. And he's talking about like hunting and stuff, and I'm like, I've never liked talking about hunting in the before time, Terry. So I'm like, why would I want to talk about it now? But I just didn't talk about it because I was like, I just love that he just the same person. And then my Aunt Laura was talking to me too. And something else, I was just like, I was going to say thank you for like talking to me and being kind. And this is a really good compliment for my Uncle Terry because he's a big, hunting and stuff like that. He was like, well, you picked a really good name because that's my best coyote hunting dog. I was like, well, that's like the highest of compliments to be compared to his best coyote dog. So whatever, I'll take it. So I have, and some family just ignored me. and I think they will continue to, and that's fine. It's their prerogative. But to get back to my dad, I know I get so sidetracked. I think one day it'll. My mom says she doesn't know if Dad will ever come around. I'm not so sure. I think I think it's going to take time. So I do think my dad will come around eventually. I think it's one of those things where, like I talked about, like the grieving process and having to get there. I also think seeing me and maybe like seeing me happy might help. But I have hopes, and I know my parents still love me, and I know and I had like such a good childhood. I know like to say like, oh, I struggled internally, and I did, but that did not mean I didn't have a good childhood. And so I always like to just remind people that like my parents were good parents. I was very blessed to be growing up as I did. Yeah, sure, I wish I would have transitioned a lot earlier, but also at the same time I wouldn't be the person I am today if I had done it any other time. So while my dad is not accepting, I know that not everybody will be accepting, and I know that that's okay, and I know it takes time. I mean, it took me like 39 years to accept myself, to be able to come out and be like, this is who I am, this is the risk I'm willing to take for my own sanity. So I know it could take him time, but I also 100% know if I called him and was like, Dad, I have a flat tire on this road, can you come help me? That he would come help me. I know he would. I have no doubt, because my dad is awesome. And I don't hold any resentment towards anybody in my family who struggles with it, or any of my friends who would struggle with it, because it is different. It's asking people in an area where we're not used to seeing things. There's not good representation. And often I'm the first trans person that people meet. And so to be that person and to come out in my family and say, this is who I am, and to know the opinions that they already have formed about people, about transgender people, I knew it was going to be tough. And I just want to say I do have like really good parents, and I love them both.
Okay, good.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what's next for Raven then?
Well, I think, so what's next for Raven is, for one, I have been going to, I'm kind of like helping, but not helping, but sort of helping, but not helping facilitate, but a trans support group in Cave. So I've been helping with that, and it's open to the public, and anybody who is an ally or struggling with their gender can come to that. So I've really focused on trying to be more out there, to be a better role model, because I really just like being by myself. Like, I like other people, and I like to exist in the world, and just like, I love doing stuff now. I used to not like going places, but I realized that I have an opportunity to use my voice for like good, and maybe help somebody else. And so I've been trying to do a little bit of that as far as like my own personal stuff. I've written a children's book. I know we're talking about that. I'm working on Amazon publishing it, but I do want to talk about it for a second though, because I think it's got some good stuff. It is about, there is a transgender character in the book. She is based off of me. I don't bring up her in the first, that she's trans in the first story, because it's not her story, she's a side character. But it is a book that delves into some of the LGBTQIA+ stuff, about chosen family, about, it's like a little 10-year-old girl who goes on a magical adventure, and she meets all these creatures, and she learns not to just judge people based on her preconceived notions. And so that's something I'm wanting to get out there, hopefully, and maybe help people find their own voice, because that's kind of what the character is doing. So I'm hoping to be able to make that work. So that's something I'm really focused on. I think I'm going to have to get more focus possibly on these laws that are being passed. I don't know how. I thought about running for office, but I actually have thought about trying to get maybe more involved in politics at some point in time. I don't know what that looks like for me. Really, I just want to focus on my children's book and helping other people, because I think it is so scary to just say, I'm going to live my life. And it's also extra scary in this area, because you do not know how people react. And the climate for this is so bad, because like, transgender people are such low-hanging fruit for politicians to attack, and so it makes it hard for people to want to come out. And so people need safe places, and they need people that are safe to come out to and to feel comfortable, because, you know, like even in my early journey, just knowing I had people that supported me even though I wasn't out was helpful. Knowing I could have those breakdowns and those moments where this is me, that I can't live my life, but at least I had people like there that they may not have understood what I was going through, but they were supportive. And I don't actually know any trans people. I didn't until I got involved in that trans group. So I literally just did this however. Like, you can absolutely do it with no support other than like my cisgendered friends and my therapist. It can be done, but I think it would have been easier having people who had my experience or something I could fall back on. But it can all be done.
So what advice would you give to others?
I think just it's important to find yourself. You're never going to be happy if you don't, and if you're questioning like who you are, I think that's natural and normal, and you should never feel ashamed. Even inside like being transgender, there's lots of different ways people express that, and your way is your way, nobody else's way. So my advice would be just to find yourself and what makes you happy. Find support. There's so much support now. There's way more support now than when I first came out. To even just like 2 or 3 years ago, there's support, and it can be found. Well, that's the thing. Like, even just like I used to be funny, but not like whatever, not so relaxed. But I think like my transition has allowed me to be relaxed and to be myself, because at this point it's like, this is my voice, and I spent all my time being silent, so now I want to talk and say what I want, and they make fun of me because I don't calibrate my emotions, I don't do nothing. Like, I am me almost all the time. I barely have a work versus at home persona. Like, I love being me. It's my favorite thing. I have never seen a mirror that I was not impressed by. I just love it. Every day is like, the first time since transitioning, I had never said this before in my life, but like one day I was just like sitting on my couch watching a TV show, and I was like, I love my life. And I was like, that's a weird thing for me to feel, because I'd never really felt that way before. I loved aspects of my life. I loved doing certain things, playing softball, hanging with my friends, but just to genuinely be happy and at peace with my life, I never felt that before. And so I think just the transition and just saying, you know what, it is hard. It is hard going out every day and not knowing how people are going to react to me, whether it's in the restrooms or in stores. I don't worry about it anymore because I don't like the word, but I am passable. I do blend very easily. And I just stopped being bitter. Like, I was so bitter before, but that's like such a terrible emotion to hang on to. Like, because then if you're just bitter, even if you go through all your processes and you're living your best life, but you're still bitter, you're still holding on to those things from your past, it's not making it any better, and you're not going to be any happier. So you just have to let things go sometimes. Unfortunately, you have to not get upset when people mispronoun you, because people are going to make mistakes. It's just going to happen. Like I often worry about the phone, right? Because I don't like my voice, but even lately I've noticed that I call places and they are like, oh, yes, ma'am. So, you just have to have some confidence. That was some of my advice too, and like in who you are as a person, and just let go of the bitterness, because you cannot go backwards and change all that stuff. That is the stuff that happened, but that's also the bricks that built you as a human. And so just work on letting that stuff go. It's not worth being bitter. And that's me. Like, I just try to be really happy every day, even when I'm sad. I always tell myself now I just got like normal people depression, because I don't have the trans stuff anchoring me down. I just cut that anchor off. And so my advice would be, work on finding your happiness, because even if you transition and you're still hanging on to all this other stuff, you're still not going to be happy. Don't expect everyone to accept you, because it's just an unrealistic thing, especially in this area. It is hard. It is not easy. It's going to be a fight for a lot of people. It was a fight for me. I still fight, just in different ways, I guess. So yeah, find good support. Use the things that we have. There's that trans support group. Community counseling center, we have like therapists that are, everybody is open and welcome in here. Like, and I will say there's always that fear. You walk into a place and you're going to be like, oh, hey, my name is this, and I'm coming here because I'm struggling with depression because I'm transgender. That's hard to say to anybody, and a stranger too. But if you want the help, you have to have that courage, and this whole transition is all about courage. It's all about finding that strength, and that's the first step. And you're also telling somebody who does not know you. They're not there to judge you. They are an unbiased human just listening to you tell your story. And that's like the best place to start in like psych therapy, at least for me it was. And then, but also, if you're thinking you're a transgender, you've got to attack all of the other things in your life that might be causing stress and depression, because it doesn't go away just because you transition, right? Like you still have those things. I woke up and it wasn't like I needed to choose to be happy. That's why I needed to do this. Not because I felt it as much, because this is who I was, that's who I feel my soul is, but I needed to choose that happiness. And what does that look like for me? So what does your happiness look like in your journey? And there, you know, the whole umbrella of transgenderism, however you say it, there's lots of ways that is shown by people. So your way is going to always be your way, right? Like no one else gets your path, no one gets your journey, no one gets to dictate your story. Don't let anybody dictate your story. It may take a while to find that strength and that passion, but find it and run with it and love it, because life really can be so much better. And that's just me talking from like the depressed side of it and knowing what that was like as a youth, and even in my 20s and my 30s, but now I'm back in my 20s because I'm young, but I'm not that old. No, I'm actually 41, and it's been really good. I was really worried even at my age to transition, but it's been like the best decision of my life. It saved my life by choosing to do this. And I fumbled through it, like I didn't know what I was doing. Before the trans support group, I didn't have any transgender friends. I didn't know anybody. I just did it through, I guess, willpower, the desire to decide that happiness was the most important thing. So my advice, I guess, would be find a good therapist that you're comfortable with. That's the most important thing. Be open with your therapy when you're talking about, because you hide stuff that's not going to help. You know, and of course, as a trans person, we always worry about hiding everything about us, right? Like you're very guarded. You put these walls up because people can't find out about you. But so, yeah, just be honest. Only come out to the people that you feel comfortable with. That's what I did. It's a slow process, but allow people to have their time to get to know you, because you're also coming out as a new person, right? Like, even if you are similar but not to who you were, you're still a new person, so people have to get to know this new person. Anyway, yeah, and surprisingly, there's a lot of support. Like when I told my hairdresser, she was very supportive. Like there is support, so don't ever feel like you're alone, because there are people out there that have very similar stories. There are people that will understand and be so kind, and everybody at CCC, from like my perspective of just working here, has always been super supportive, always been super kind. And I know, like, obviously I know some of the therapists because I work with them and stuff. They're all super nice. They're all super kind. And I'm trans, and they know I'm trans, and they ain't over there judging me and worried about it, so they're not going to worry about anybody else. So, you know, just find your reason to be happy. Allow yourself to discover yourself, because that's the most important thing. We want that answer right away. We want to be that person, but find yourself, explore it, make sure it's who you are, because we all go through changes throughout our life, and then when you get there, you will get there.